Bobby Charlton, who was arguably the most distinguished footballer that England has ever produced, has sadly died at the age of 86. He was certainly our most successful footballer, the only English player to win the FA Cup, the Football League, the European Cup and the World Cup. In 1968 he captained Manchester United to become the first English club to win the European Cup, and that was exactly 10 years after their first attempt, which ended in the tragic air crash. They were returning to England after beating Red Star Belgrade in the quarter-finals, in which Charlton had scored twice, and when they landed at Munich to refuel. It was a freezing night, and the plane made multiple attempts to take off before, on its final attempt, when it crashed and burst into flames. Charlton was thrown 40 yards from the plane, still strapped into his seat, and he was clear of the burning wreck. He woke a few minutes later, suffering mainly from shock and minor cuts. He later described his escape as a miracle, but it would haunt him for the rest of his life, and he was never comfortable flying again. A total of 26 people were killed in the air crash, including 8 players and 3 members of United's staff. Born in Ashington in Northumberland, Bobby was the second of 4 sons to Robert Charlton, who was a miner, and his wife Elizabeth. Elizabeth, also known as Sissy, came from the famous Milburn football family, and 4 of her brothers were professional footballers, and her cousin was the Newcastle United and England centre-forward Jackie Milburn. Bobby's elder brother Jack also became a professional footballer, and although he wasn't as gifted as Bobby was, he had a good career at Leeds United. He was also in the 1966 England World Cup winning team. The route for most boys from Ashington was to finish school and then go down the pit and work as a miner. And in fact, Jack did this before he became a footballer and went to Leeds United. However, it was obvious that Bobby had a lot of talent as a footballer. The problem was he passed his 11+, but the local grammar school was a rugby playing school. However, he was so good that his head teacher, with a lot of encouragement from his mother, arranged for a place at another nearby school, the football-playing Bedlington Grammar School. In his last year at Bedlington, he played for England schoolboys 4 times and scored 5 goals. This led to football scouts from all across the country to come to his house. He received offers from 18 clubs in all. However, it was Joe Armstrong, who was Manchester United's chief scout, that gave him the best offer, and so he signed for them in 1953. It was a good choice because their manager, Sir Matt Busby, or Matt Busby as he was then, gave a lot of opportunity to young players. With his young players, Busby produced an extremely talented team that played with a lot of flair, and they became known as the Busby Babes. In those days there was no Premier League, and the top division was the First Division, which United won in the 55-56 season, and again they won it the following year, in which Charlton scored twice on his debut against Charlton Athletic, ironically, on the 6th of October 1956. As champions in 57, they were entered into the European Cup, and they were the first English side to even enter into the Cup. They reached the semi-finals. The following year, they were looking extremely strong, and they'd just beaten Red Star Belgrade in the quarter-finals when the accident happened. It took Busby 10 years to rebuild the team, and then in 1968, Manchester United produced a historic night with Charlton as captain, when they became the first English team to win the European Cup. With that much talent, and having already represented his country at schoolboy level, a call-up wasn't long coming. He made his first appearance for the national team in 1958. 2 years before his European Cup victory with Manchester United, he was of course instrumental in helping his national side win the World Cup for the first and so far only time. Although that final, on a sunny July afternoon, was considered by many to be a West Ham affair, and rightly so, with all 4 goals in the captaincy coming from West Ham players, it was Charlton's ability to tie up Franz Beckenbauer and still maintain a threat going forward that many considered was instrumental to England's success. This was later confirmed in the 1970 quarter-final when England played West Germany again in Mexico, and again Charlton was tying up Franz Beckenbauer. When England were 2-0 up, the manager Alf Ramsey took Charlton off to rest him for the semi, which was the biggest error of Alf Ramsey's career. This left Beckenbauer free to create, and he did. And of course, as we all know, Germany went on to win 3-2. It wasn't only Charlton's playing ability, it was the way he carried himself both on and off the pitch that won him a lot of respect, even from non-Manchester United fans. With a total of 758 appearances for Manchester United, as well as another 49 appearances for other clubs and 106 international appearances. Amazingly, he only ever picked up 2 yellow cards. If you want to put that in perspective, Wayne Rooney over his career picked up 145. I was lucky enough to see him as a young child when Manchester United came to play my club. If I'm honest, I have to admit that I was more excited at the prospect of seeing George Best, and for those of my age you'll remember that he was a pop star footballer, a complete idol, with his fancy dribbling and fashionable haircuts, etc. However, my lasting impression from that day was Charlton. Even though he was in the twilight years of his career, every time he picked up the ball, you could feel the tension in the people around me, because they didn't know what was going to happen next. He was such an explosive player. He was capable of making forging runs. He had a terrific shot with either foot, long raking crosses and passes. Every time he picked up the ball, it was as if everyone around me sucked in their breath and held it, waiting for something to happen. Overall, he was a consummate professional. He gave everything on the field and gave away nothing off the field. After his career came to an end at Manchester United, he had a brief spell at Preston North End and an even briefer one at Waterford in Ireland. He had a brief spell in management, also at Preston North End, and then spent some time as a director of Wigan Athletic. In 1984, he was invited to become a director on the board of directors at Manchester United. This was partly because of his football knowledge, but also because Manchester United decided they needed a name, and Matt Busby had just retired from the board of directors. Aside from his career in football, Charlton also did charity work and was involved in charities concerned with landmine clearance. He married his wife Norma in 1961, and he had 2 daughters, Suzanne and Andrea. One of his grandchildren is named after him. His death means that Sir Geoff Hurst is the last surviving member of the 1966 World Cup winning team. Sir Bobby Charlton was a true legend in every sense of the word. His fans weren't limited to Manchester United fans or even England fans. He was known throughout the world. I remember in my youth when I worked in South America a lot, as soon as people realised I was English, they would always come up to me and say Bobby Charlton. Such was his reputation. He really was a true giant and he will be missed. Bobby Charlton, rest in peace.